Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Yeah? Hello, Hassan. Good to see you. Congratulations. My name is Tim Kituri. I am an international student, have been for a long time, about 40 years now. Grew up in Kenya, but some people still argue that I'm still growing up, but that's not for discussion today. And I've been in Victoria and Royal Roads for 10 years. Celebrated a 10-year anniversary last week, I think. I wasn't available for that celebration. But the biggest milestone in my life is I'm a dad now. And I'm actually on parental leave. So this is so cool to be away from my baby Ruth. I love her so much. She's so cute. But her pulling on my hair and grabbing on my beard and spitting up and feeding, that is a little more than I can handle. So today she's with her mom, a little bit of a long lunchtime feed, and I get to share this really exceptional moment with my community, my Royal Roads community. As an international student, maybe I should start by telling you that my journey in Canada started in Halifax. Yeah, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Nobody tells you how bitterly cold it gets in Halifax, because if they did, Africans, Kenyans like myself, would never set foot in Nova Scotia. Absolutely not. I remember my first winter, it was minus 35, and I'm on the phone trying to tell my dad and mom, it's cold, Dad, it's minus 35. Like, what? What does that mean? Put your hand in the freezer, then crank it up another several thousand notches. Oh, freezer? What is that? Anyway, so it's tough. It's a challenge being an international student because of the differences in culture, differences in expectation, the weather, the food, almost everything. And then what makes it even more complicated is that transition from student to professional. How do we do that within these contexts of everything being foreign? Getting on a bus is a challenge. I was on a bus. So in Kenya, you get on the bus at any of the two doors. You can get on in the front or in the back. There's a bus conductor. He comes up and he takes your cash and you sit down and you tell him where you want to go. So first days in Halifax, getting on the bus doors open. I jump in the back of the bus through the back door. Ooh, I did not know what was happening. The driver, he doesn't even pull over. He comes and starts yelling at me, "Why aren't you paying for this bus ride?" I'm like, "Oh, I have my money here. Where's the conductor? What's wrong with you?" Okay. I could have ended up being arrested, but fortunately, I was able to talk myself out of that really precarious situation. Now, that seems a little, it's not as daunting as transitioning into the workforce, transitioning into a professional capacity. And so this is what I want to spend my few minutes here talking about. And as my role now is manager of the MGM, Master of Global Management here at Royal Roads, and I've worked with a lot of international students, and and the biggest barrier for many of us is that, again, that transition. So how do we move from that student role to a professional role? So I'm going to use some really common language that we have all been familiar with. These first two speakers have raised that. And to help bring what I think would be a really simple way of making this daunting, complex reality a little bit more palatable for all of us. I'll start with this concept of community. We've talked about it, we've heard about it, we know about what a community is. And to take it one step further, to understand that a community is, in a very, very simplified definition, a group of people working towards a similar goal. That is your community. So the bus that was almost thrown out of, I was probably supposed to be a member of that bus community, moving towards wherever it is we were going. I don't even remember where we were going, but I remember that story so clearly. So the idea of community then means that an organization is a community. Where we work becomes our community. We might not like it as much because we would rather be home and outdoors enjoying fun and sun, but it is still our community. And it is a human need to become and to be a member of said communities. Part of a community then requires each of us to have a purpose. Each community has its purpose in a society of a greater role. And we all of us have a purpose that we have to fulfill within that community. So in order for us to feel and to belong to that community, we do have to achieve certain purposes. So one is community and two is purpose within that community. And I'll bring in my marketing hat here. The third concept is the concept of a brand. So to my high school friends over here, any brands that you're familiar with? Anyone shout one out? A brand? Nike, thank you. Claire is not a McDonald's. Tim Hortons, oh yeah. My name's Tim. I thought I would get free coffee at Tim Hortons, but no. But a brand, really, really common concept that we all have. And I think of a brand as a shortcut to defining and exposing that purpose in a community. So the purpose of Nike is to give us cool shoes. The purpose of Tim Hortons is to keep us caffeinated, to bring up our children. And each of these brands shares that purpose. So one way of thinking about that transition is to think of yourself as a brand. We've known about this personal branding idea for a while. So think about what is your brand? What do you bring to the community? What is your purpose within a community? And how do you then articulate that brand in terms of finding a job, a community that you can belong in, and more importantly, articulating your brand towards and to that community, right? Community, purpose, brand. All right, so how do we do it? Three more concepts that I've been thinking about, and as a father, you have a lot of spare time to think. But creating a brand is one of the more important things that we can ever do. So companies, the Nikes and the Tim Hortons, spend billions of dollars creating those brands for themselves so that we can all know exactly what it is they do. If Nike said tomorrow they're going to start making coffee, I would not want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And if Tim Hortons made shoes, maybe they would recycle their cups. But, so your brand is a really, really important part of who you are. So how do you, and I'm speaking to international students, but again, I know we have members of audience that are not particularly international. So how do you create your brand to articulate your purpose within this community? And the community in this sense is the organization. First thing is service. The simplest, most effective way to show your value in a community is to perform a service. So if you are working for Tim Hortons and you're trying to articulate what that service is, then you say, well, you can either brew coffee or make donuts, or you can do something for that community, which is your organization. So then you brand yourself as being able to perform a service. Very simple for university students with degrees to say, well, since my degree is in intercultural communication, the service I can do for you is in that form of intercultural communication needs of the organization. So thinking of an organization as a community, service needs to go two ways. Service towards creating the product that that organization is creating, as well as service to the community. We have to keep that community growing and healthy. So thinking of your brand, what can I do? What am I capable of doing for this organization? And what can I do for the members of this organization so that they can keep producing? So thinking of your brand, service is an important concept. Creativity is another human requirement. So thinking back to the days before cell phones and Google, we were drawing carvings in walls and caves. And I think that was the Google of the day. But that is, creativity is a basic requirement of being human. We are all of us creative. And a requirement of a community is creativity. Creativity is a little simpler for us international students because we have been exposed to so many different ways of seeing things. We can look at problems in the same similar problem, but having been exposed to different cultures, different ways of addressing the problem, like the salts developed in India, that was a creative solution that somebody said, well, if this works in India, it could probably work in the United States. Creativity. So your brand has to be able to show creativity. Show how you can A, create solutions to problems, and B, create love for that and growth in the community. One of my favorite forms of creativity is humor. Making people laugh, keeping people happy, boosts that creativity, and also keeps people excited with what is going on in the society. Third and final, before I leave, is love. The idea of love within a community. It is not love that holding and touching and, no, not that kind. The love I have for my baby is one thing. But to think of love in this context is to think of the opposite. Not hate, but fear. Fear is one of the things that we need to remove from ourselves. And fear of failure is one of those biggest blocks and barriers that we face. So think of love as your guiding principle. The absence of fear, how you relate and interact with each other, has to be in a way that motivates, is a way that keeps people growing, keeps people happy, and keeps people positive. So creativity, service, love. That is the key to building a brand that you can then use to articulate your purpose within a community and keep yourself viable and relevant in this really challenging time. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. I'm off to feed my baby.